Welcome back to Star or Shovelware, my name's Luke, and today on the channel we're dipping once more into the more seedy side of the Switch eShop as we take a look at Galgun Double Peace. And this one is an on-rail shooter similar to the House of the Dead games, but instead of blasting away at zombies and demons out to eat your face off, in Galguns you've got a bunch of hormonal anime girls to contend with who are also trying to eat your face off, though in a different way entirely. Now as a 30-something-year-old man, it's getting increasingly more difficult to justify covering these kind of games on the channel, but as you might expect, this series of games has unsurprisingly proven popular in Japan, and with a number of similar titles making the way west, it seems that there's also a market for them over here. So let's dive right on into this review, see what's what, and make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy my content and want to see more. So when it comes to the storyline in Galguns, compared to the other anime style sleaze 'em ups I've covered on the channel, the story in this one has a surprising amount of depth to it. And while admittedly I do use the phrase depth lightly, the game does put a focus on this storyline rather than just using it as an excuse to undress people. Now the story itself centres around you, a male student at what appears to be a predominantly female school, who after finding himself the target of a Cupid Angel's love arrow, gets blasted with a full powered shot from her love cannons, which inadvertently causes every girl in the school to want a piece of him. While this might sound like a horny teenager's dream scenario, the downside to this is that our main man has used up all of his funk in one go, and so now only has a single day to find his true love and get them to fall for him, though battling through a school full of obsessive female students is gonna make this tough. Now the story has a number of different elements going on in it, and there are several different branching storyline paths and multiple endings to discover depending on who you target as your love interest and the decisions you make along the way, and each of the main characters has their own backstory for you to discover, so there's a reasonable amount of replayability with this one despite the core gameplay loop not changing much from one playthrough to the next. Having said this, it is still pretty light stuff and has all the hallmarks of any anime rom-com TV series or game, so don't expect too much depth with its characters or plot twists, but it still has some amusing situations and dialogue options for you to experience, and it's really not the worst plotline for a game, despite its crudeness shining through at times. So if you've played any of the House of the Dead games or any of the classic on-rails light gun style games, the core gameplay mechanics in Galguns is similar. Your character moves through levels automatically, with your job being to move around an on-screen cursor to target incoming cuties before hitting the Y button to fire off a pheromone shot and sending them crumbling to the ground in a heap of hormonal ecstasy. Now, like other titles in the genre, each of your targets has a weakness, that being either the head, chest, waist or legs, but these only reveal themselves once you target a girl and see the coloured dialogue pop up, so you need to be quite quick on the trigger. Failing to take them down fast enough will result in you taking love damage from the words of admiration or a slap of a love letter in the face, though you are able to continue onward at the expense of some MP or the points which contribute to your overall score. Now as with the storyline, your route through the game can take you to many different locations, from hallways and classrooms to libraries and locker rooms, and this does add a decent amount of variety to the gameplay, with several of these areas also having multiple routes through them. While there isn't any real variety to the game's enemies, or girls should I say, in terms of the size, and none of them really offer any kind of special abilities to contend with, there are around 70 different girls for you to encounter, and some variety is added to these encounters by means of tiny demons which possess them, and these must be first targeted and destroyed before the girls themselves become vulnerable. Now while the core level loop doesn't divert much beyond working your way through levels, fending off girls and trying to earn as much MP as possible, the addition of different collectibles hidden away in levels does go some way to enhancing the gameplay, and these can only be revealed by focusing your aim, allowing you to see through objects, which coincidentally includes the top layer of each girl's clothing. These secret objects include things like passports, which unlock profiles for each girl in the collectibles menu, pink blob things which grant additional score when shot, and hard to spot sparkling targets, whose locations are hinted at in Sakura Talk, a kind of messaging platform filled with girls chatter. And these collectathons add a little extra difficulty to what is generally a pretty trivial difficulty curve. It's worth noting that there are also several boss fights in the game, though again these don't really stray too far from the core gameplay dynamics, and I did find that all of them featured very similar boss mechanics. Now, despite there being an obvious sexual nature to the game and the questionable setting of a high school, which is pretty much the norm in Japan but does raise some eyebrows in Western culture, Galguns does keep things tame in comparison to some of the more, shall we say, risque titles, for instance, Waifu Uncovered. To the best of my knowledge, you won't find any fully nude character models in the game, and the most you're going to get to see some underwear, though some of the minigames do push the envelope a little, requiring you to physically touch the girls or focus in on specific body parts while they constantly squeal with delight. Now, while these occasions do offer a welcome change of pace from the standard shooting gallery style gameplay, they also add an unavoidable amount of sleaze to the game, and if playing a title like this in the first place didn't make an old bastard like me feel uncomfortable, then these sections surely did. Admittedly, they also keep things light with these and often feature quite humorous situations, but again I think it's just the actual age of the characters which really makes it feel wrong. So overall, setting aside the game's theme for a moment, when it comes to the gameplay itself, Galguns is not a bad game, and it pretty much harps back to the classic light gun games of the 90s, though I did really feel like it lacked a lot of the depth and excitement of these titles, with there not really being any of the action-oriented segments which made games like Time Crisis and Die Hard such a joy to play. Understandably, it's catering for a different audience and likely not one that includes me, but I still feel they could have done more when it comes to the core gameplay loop. Now, like I said, multiple playthroughs will reveal more of the storyline and offer different routes through the game, and you'll also unlock several new characters, each with a different set of stats. But admittedly I didn't really understand what these stats actually did, as you're also able to increase them through buying objects at the store in between levels, and the only thing that I can really assume is that they open up additional dialogue options, as some of them were actually locked when I encountered them. Aside from the story mode, you also have score attack mode, which is exactly what it says on the tin, and as well as the collectibles menu, you can also play dress up with any of the game's characters, which includes a bunch of DLC costumes, each of which will then appear in the game next time you play. All in all though, I'd say that Galguns Double Peace knows its target audience, and if you set aside the game's themes, it's still a fun little time filler game. It's not going to really challenge you, and you may feel like you need a bath after playing, but it's also not terrible either, and its sleaze factor is a little more muted, though it's not entirely sleaze free either. So the original version of Galguns Double Peace released on the PS4 and PS Vita back in 2015, and while I would usually say that graphics like this would look dated if running on something like the PS5 or Xbox Series X, on the Switch they actually look right at home, and they're not too dissimilar from some of the other JRPGs that are released recently on the platform. The game is by no means stunning, but it still looks decent when it comes to the overall quality of its anime styled artwork. On the audio side of things, we get some decent sound effects, which I will admit are primarily comprised of squeals and groans of pleasure, but the game's Japanese voice acting does give an air of authenticity, and the game's soundtrack has that expected happy, upbeat rhythm to it, which is always fun to play along to. So performance on the Switch is fine. The game is 7 years old now, so you wouldn't really expect any real issues, but ports can be hit and miss on the Switch, and thankfully this is one that's done well. Issues wise, I can't really say that I had any. Gameplay is relatively simple, so there's very little to go wrong with it, and I'd say that one of my main bugbears is the lack of any touchscreen controls, which I feel would have been ideal given the gameplay and the console. As I've already said, the game isn't the deepest in terms of its mechanics, and it could have done with a few more interesting set pieces and a little more action to spice things up a bit, but if you've played the other games you likely know what to expect with this one, and when it comes to my own personal rating, I'm going to be giving Galgun's Double Peace 3 out of 5 stars. Just like the Waifu Uncovered series, Hentai vs Evil, or many other games of questionable content, Galgun's Double Peace is perhaps best played on your own, though I will say that the game's story is at least a little more wholesome with this one, or at least that's what I like to tell myself. And so that about does it for this review of Galgun's Double Peace on the Nintendo Switch. As always, make sure to hit that like button if it helped you out. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the game and what your favourite anime based games are in the comment section below. And if you watch my content regularly but are not yet subscribed, then please consider doing so. For now though, I just want to thank you all once again for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.